Okay, Chapter 1. My dad left when I still had a month to go in the dark room, and historically, when people have tried to figure me out, as in what went wrong, they usually conclude that Mom spoiled me, gave me everything I wanted because I had no pappy. Truth is, Mom thinks I'm a whole lot better off without that particular pappy, and has told me 1,000 times she's glad I had the good sense to stay packed away until he split. They were young. My mother was my age, now, when I was born, and so was my dad. I don't know very much about Dad, really. In 18 years, he's made no effort to contact me, and all I have is a picture. He's a college professor somewhere in the Midwest. Mom thinks in geology. She doesn't think geology is in the Midwest. She thinks that's what he teaches. The fact that he's excited about rocks hasn't had much genetic influence on me as far as I can tell, but what I see in the picture of him has. My dad is a tub of lard. At least when he was 18. I'm not talking about a guy who should have gone light on desserts and between meal snacks. I'm talking about a guy who should have spread superglue on his lips before showing his face outside his bedroom each morning. My dad could have sold his extra chins for marble sacks. And my mom is a fox. Really, bona fide $100,000 silver pelt fox. She has dark brown hair and green eyes and this slinky, long, muscular body that she keeps in perfect working order, and I know for a fact half the kids who come to my house hope to catch her in shorts and a tank top. Christ, she's only 36 years old. Mom, I said one morning a couple of years ago, Dad's picture clutched tight in my beefy paw, tell me something. Tell me why somebody who looks like you would fall for somebody who looks like this. I plopped the picture on the coffee table in front of her. Looks aren't everything, Eric, she said. His looks aren't anything, I said back, and he left them for me. She looked up and smiled. You look a lot better than your dad. He was compulsive. Ate all the time. You're big and solid. That's different. Big and solid as 12 pounds of mashed potatoes in an 8-pound sack, I said. If you dressed me up in an orange and red sweater, you could ride me around the world in 80 days. And you have a much better sense of humor than your father, she said, probably remembering Dad's high regard for rocks. Mom was never one to let me dwell on the parts of me I didn't like. My name is Eric Calhoun, and though I have spent hours in the weight room since that conversation, most folks call me Moby. My English teacher, Ms. Lemry, who is also my coach, sometimes calls me Eric the Well-Read, because I'm pretty smart. She also calls me Double E for Eric Enigma. I can't figure exactly how you're put together inside, she says. You're a jock who doesn't compete in his best sport, a student who doesn't excel where his aptitude is highest, and you surround yourself with a supporting cast straight out of The Far Side. To each his own, I said, and pirouetted tippy-toe out of the room, in keeping with my image as Double E. If my belly button were a knothole, it would certainly be more congruous with my keg-like body. I have chiseled away at my father's genetic code since I realized I was better equipped to roll to school than walk, but the bare bones me is still more Raymond Burr than Arnold Schwarzenegger. All of which wouldn't matter, but for the amount of time that belly button is exposed, which approaches 4 hours a day. I'm a swimmer. I probably don't have to tell you the Speedo people don't employ William Conrad as a fashion designer, and I therefore do not step onto the starting blocks looking like a Sports Illustrated fashion plate. Looks alone would be enough to keep most guys with my particular body design as far away from water as the Wicked Witch of the West. But swimming is a thinking man's sport, and Ms. Lemry is a thinking man's coach. Besides, it keeps me far from the clutches of Coach Stone, who has been trying to get me to come out for wrestling since I was a frosh because he fancies me unbeatable as a heavyweight, which I might very well be. But the idea of a permanent gash across the bridge of my nose and Matt Burns on every pointed appendage does not appeal to me, no matter how many trophies I might walk away with. I'm not a great swimmer, but I'm good. A lot better than you'd think looking at me. And I like the challenge of the clock, as well as the people involved. I also like the wake I create for the guy in the next lane. We're 8,000 yards into the workout. Lemry's whistle blasts. Let's wrap it up. 25 yards, all out, 5 breaths. 5 breaths. No sweat. 25 yards, she yells 2 laps later as we pull ourselves onto the deck at the far end. All out, 3 breaths. The oxygen bill is in the mail. 25 yards, all out, 2 breaths. Serious oxygen debt begins. 25 yards, did I say all out? 1 breath. The whistle. 25 yards. Anyone hear me say all out? No breaths. Come on, ladies and gentlemen. We're almost there. The whistle. Oxygen debt approaches bankruptcy. 25 yards. No breaths. Flip your turn and come back as far as you can. Last one, people. If darkness closes in or you hear the voice of God, come up. We hyperventilate so hard we can barely hear her instructions, though any of the 20 of us could recite them rote. I hit the water almost full bore, backed off enough to keep from thrashing. At 15 yards, I feel the tightness in my lungs, and I back off the cadence maybe a half beat, swallowing to give my body the illusion of breathing. I reach the far wall, tucking tight for maximum push-off, blowing out only enough air to keep a chlorinated flash flood out of my sinuses, and go for it. In 3 years, no one on the team has outdistanced me at this drill. Mark Britton says it's because I have a blowhole, but Mark is often intentionally unkind. It's because I know how to be mean to myself. I swim distance freestyle. I'm within 3 strokes of the wall when my head pops out of the water like a marker buoy, and a reverberation erupts out of me that would normally bring paramedics. Darkness crowds the edges of my peripheral vision, but I clutch the lane rope and suck air like an industrial-strength shop vac. Someday I'll make the full 50 yards. I can do it easily fresh, but not at the end of a 3-hour workout. Good job, Moby, Coach hollers from across the pool. You'll never be extinct with that attitude. I stand in front of the huge double doors at the entrance to Sacred Heart Hospital and breathe deep, my frozen hair hugging my head like a bicycle helmet, and my breath shooting from my mouth like exhaust from a truck. I wear only a light jacket. My internal heating system boils for hours after workout. Coach forever tells me to cover up when I go outside, but when I cover up, I sweat like a walrus in a sauna. I threaten Coach with my laundry. Sarah Burns is inside, 8th floor, child and adolescent psychiatric unit. I've put this off. Thought she'd be out in a couple of days, but it's been a full week. Sarah Burns, toughest kid I know, and she just slipped away. I don't want to go inside. I was here once about 4 years ago when my 3rd cousin got drunk and attempted suicide. Not much of an attempt, really. He OD'd on Flintstone vitamins, but he was wigged out so bad they stuck him in for 72-hour observation. What they observed was extremely yellow pee. I hated visiting him. The place itself was nice, thick carpeting and comfortable chairs, plenty of books to read, and games to play. It felt safe in a strange way, not for me, but for the people in there. But they all had a look as if something important had been peeled away, and you got the feeling it could happen to you. Now Sarah Burns is here, my best friend. I stayed fat a whole year for her. I pushed through the double-door entrance, passing the information desk on my left, following the carpeted corridors to the bank of elevators where one stands open and empty. I push 8 and turn to lean against the back wall when I hear, "Hold!" and see a familiar face, a nameless kid from school, pushing a cart of linens toward me. I lunge for the row of buttons on the wall, intentionally pushing closed door, but appearing for all the world as if I'm trying to hold it open. "Whoops," I say as the doors come together. I don't want company. I don't want to explain who I'm here to see or what happened to her. After checking in, I spot Sarah Burns sitting on an overstuffed couch, gazing at that space-out spot 3 or 4 inches in front of her nose. I say hi to no response and sit, lightly touching her forearm. Without her spirit behind her eyes, Sarah Burns is truly one of the ugliest human beings outside the circus. When she was 3, as she tells it, she pulled a pot of boiling spaghetti off the stove onto herself, leaving horrible burn scars covering her face and hands. Her father, maybe the cruelest and certainly the most insensitive man I have had the misfortune to know, allowed only the medical attention required to keep her out of danger. Almost nothing reconstructive was done. He said it would serve as a good lesson to her in the future. A woman approaches. "You must be Eric," she says. I nod. "Is she going to be okay?" "I'm Laurel," she says, extending her hand. "Sarah's counselor." She's a big woman, not fat, but strong, solid, maybe in her early 30s, with those earthy kind of features that require no makeup. She's not so much attractive as she is warm. "I don't know, to tell the truth," she says to my question. She hasn't responded to much, though her doctor says that she has all the proper physical reactions. I study Sarah Burns' eyes, while Sarah Burns studies the cosmos. What should I say to her? I mean, can she understand me? I don't know. Assume she can. Talk to her like you would if she were answering, Laurel says. Make things as normal as possible. I nod. The nurse takes Sarah Burns' hand. Sarah, you have a visitor? If you want things to be normal, I say. You have to call her by her whole name. What? You have to call her by her whole name, Sarah Burns. She only answers to Sarah Burns. Laurel stares at me blankly. When we were in junior high, I tell her, Sarah Burns got sick of every new Einstein at school thinking he was the only genius in the world to figure out this great pun about her last name and her condition. She hated waiting for them to get it, so she made everyone call her Sarah Burns. If you call her Sarah, she won't answer. Laurel nods. I'll tell the others that's important. Is there anything else? I don't think so. Well, I'll leave you two alone. Just talk with her about things that might jar her. Remember crispy pork rinds? I whisper into her ear when Laurel is out of sight. If anything should get a reaction, that should. Sarah Burns stares ahead, while I remember. I dropped onto the hard wooden chair outside Mr. Motz's office, contemplating the conversation we were about to have. The chair creaked desperately under the pressure of my considerable bulk, the seat all but eclipsed by my beefy thighs. My mission once that office door opened was to not lie. I didn't want to tell the truth exactly. I just wanted to not lie. There is a difference, I told myself. I was armed with information from Sarah Burns' report on the Bill of Rights that I would use if necessary. Ms. Barker smiled from behind her secretary's desk, and I detected a hint of compassion. Ms. Barker had seen a lot of kids in the seat, probably none more than me, and knew well we needed all the compassion we could get, though it would be of little help once that door opened. Her phone beeped and she spoke quietly into the handset, looked up and said, "You can go in now, Eric." I grimaced. Slowly lifting my carcass from the chair, Ms. Barker smiled again. Remember, it's against the law for him to do what he wants to do to you. Eric, have a seat, Moth said, waving his hand toward another hard wooden chair, a twin to that in the outer office. I sat down, closing my eyes, as I recognized the folded makeshift newspaper on his desk, forcing back the dread climbing through the top of my stomach and into my throat like a slow stream of burning lava. Crispy pork rinds. Rivulets of perspiration, a Calhounian trademark, began to run down my well-padded rib cage toward my belt. Soon my shirt would be soaked in moths. A true psychological mercenary would have me. Think dry. Mott spread the paper deliberately across his expansive glass-covered desk surface. It looks at least as good as the regular school paper that comes out every 2 weeks, I thought. Maybe better. Watts glared at me, his light blue eyes penetrating my hopeless defenses like a laser through cotton candy. And I remember wondering if there's a graduate class principals take, Steely Gaze 501 or something, where they learn that. "Have you lost some weight, Eric?" Watts asked, his tone conversational, almost friendly. I was not to be tricked. "No, sir." He squinted, cocking his head to one side. "Maybe you're just growing into your body." "I doubt it, sir. I'll probably always be a fat kid." "You shouldn't put yourself down, Eric," Maude said. "It can't be good for your self-esteem." Sarah Burns will be elected Miss America on the day Maude cares one bit about my self-esteem. I wasn't putting myself down, sir. I was just telling the truth. As was often the case under extreme pressure in those days, my mind ran nonsensically with his last words. Next to the steam room at my mom's fitness club was the self-esteem room. You go in after a hard workout and clouds of self-esteem roll out of the pipes to make you magically feel better. And if you used to stutter, you step forward from the watery mist, flawlessly booming out the Gettysburg Address. Or if you had your face burned like Sarah Burns, you emerge as a porcelain-skinned China doll. Or if you were fat, Maude jarred me back. "Well, be that as it may, I guess we're not here to talk about your weight, are we?" "Probably not," I said. "Probably not." Maude's eyebrows arched menacingly toward his crew cut. "Well," I said nervously, the floodgates of my sweat glands creaking against the swelling reservoir. "I'm not exactly sure why you called me up in here." "Oh, really?" Maude picked up the paper, reading the headline. "Crispy pork rinds? Exactly what does that mean, Mr. Calhoun? Crispy pork rinds?" It was not a good sign that Maude was calling me by my surname. "I'm not sure, sir. Isn't that like some kind of snack, like cheese puffs or something?" The floodgates burst. Tributaries of sweat streamed south. I hoped the elastic on my undershorts was waterproof. "It may very well be the name of a snack," Maude said. "It is also the title on this so-called newspaper." I nodded silently. "Oh." "Oh," he mimicked. "Is that all you have to say?" Gotta be careful here, I thought. "Don't want to lie," I nodded. "Do you know how I know this is your handiwork?" he asked. No words were the best words. "Because you're the only kid in this entire junior high who can write like this. You have a talent with language, Mr. Calhoun, but you're letting that talent work against you." "Maybe someone from the high school wrote it," I offered. "You know, dropped it off right before school. Like maybe they're trying to get some kid here in trouble." Maude smiled. "Some kid here is in trouble. Every article in this piece of trash is about someone at this school." He sat forward in his plush, high-backed chair. The one Sarah Burns called his throne, regarding me with the utterest contempt. "Now, I'm going to say this once." Here comes, I thought. For my sake, Sarah Burns, this better work. "Did you create this newspaper?" I took a deep breath, my throat tightening over it. "I stand on the Fifth Amendment," I squeaked, "on the grounds that my answer may tend to incriminate me." For the briefest of moments, Maude sat stunned. I held my breath wide-eyed. "You what?" he said in a near whisper, his eyes slits. "I stand on—" "I heard you!" He sank back as he quickly gathered what there was of his wits. "So you're going to lie?" I'm not lying. I'm standing on the Fifth Amendment. That's this thing where I know what the Fifth Amendment is, Mr. Calhoun. It's used in a court of law, not in a principal's office. Sarah Burns' report on the Bill of Rights said it was a basic... So, Sarah Burns is in on it too, huh? I didn't say that. And you didn't say she wasn't. Why don't you stand on the Fifth Amendment? By now I was sweating so hard I began to slide across the seat. I said, okay, we stand on the Fifth Amendment, on the grounds that you may tend to incriminate yourselves. I nodded. Uh-huh. Mott stood. He was a full 6 feet 5 inches, weighing more than 235 pounds, carrying not 1 ounce of fat. His striped black and gray neckties spilled over his massive chest like a roller coaster track. His nearly black hair and dark beard served only to amplify the intensity of those unforgiving blue eyes. Mr. Motts was one very scary dude. Let me make something clear, Mr. Perry Mason, he said. I'm willing to let you stand on the Fifth Amendment one time. And I'm willing to let this crispy pork rinds thing go one time. But there will be no publications at this school without official approval, which means my approval. And if I see this again, I promise you I will make your life a living hell. Do you understand me? I can only nod. Very well. You may go. I stood, turning to do just that. My pants plastered to the backs of my legs like wet cellophane and sweat pouring from my brow like rain. Eric, Maud said as I reached the door. Huh? You're perspiring. I take that as a sign you know you've made a big mistake. In the outer office, Ms. Barker glanced up and smiled, searching for signs of the battle, finding them in my colorless face and soaked shirt. Oh, Eric, she said, crinkling her nose. Not so good, huh? Not so good. She reached into her center desk drawer, withdrawing a copy of Crispy Pork Rinds. It's a little rough. For a finished product, she whispered, smiling. But I've seen worse. Why Crispy Pork Rinds? I looked to make sure Motts' door remained closed. Don't you get it? Sarah Burns is crispy, and I'm a porker, and rinds are the part that's left that no one pays attention to. We print the news the regular newspaper misses. Very clever, she said. May I assume the first copy was the last? I looked toward the closed door, raised my eyebrows, and shrugged. So, how'd it go? You take the Fifth? Sarah Burns asked in the hallway outside the math room. I slapped a flat palm to my chest in a hopeless gesture to quiet the jackhammer beating of my heart and breathe deep. Yeah, I took the Fifth. And it must work better in court than here, I said. And now he knows you're in on it because my brain went dead and I told him where I learned about the Fifth. Sorry, Sarah Burns, it just slipped out. I don't care if he knows I'm in on it, she said. In fact, I hope he knows. I think we should get extra credit. This book I read says some of the best journalism in the whole 1960s came from underground newspapers. Well, Moss says he's going to forget it this time. But if it comes out again, he's going to make my life a living hell. Like, this is heaven? Sarah Burns said. Yeah. I looked down at my body, the target of every fat joke since Eve walked up behind Adam and grabbed his love handles. Like Sarah Burns, I wondered what old man Motts could do to make things worse. He could make me come to school without a shirt, I said out loud. Or make me wear a bra like kids did in 6th grade. Sarah Burns laughed. He'd get fired. Your mom could sue the school for all the money it's worth, which can't be much. I say we get busy with Crispy Pork Rinds, too. What we see is a pretty interesting narrator. Okay, the main character, Eric Calhoun, he is a big kid, an honest kid, and he talks about stuff in a way that I don't know, it sounds authentic to me, very teenagerish. It's full of sort of angst, and it's full of sarcasm. He makes a lot of jokes about himself, about everything really, and he does some things that are a little different for us. He talks about his mother and says that she's really good looking, which this is a thing that, let's be honest, people should not do. It makes us all uncomfortable when you talk about the looks of, say, someone in your family. It just doesn't feel quite right. It's taboo. He describes himself as a very big kid. His dad is a tub of lard, and he got his looks from his dad, so it means he's a big, kind of overweight, fat kid. And he is a swimmer. He says he's a good swimmer, and he'd be a better wrestler, but he doesn't like wrestling, so he's a really good swimmer. And the reason he's good at it is because he can be mean to himself. He also talks about his best friend, who is Sarah Burns. And in this, he reveals that when she was 3, she went to a stove and pulled a pot of boiling spaghetti onto her body and her face. And so she has burns all across her face and her hands. And her father didn't allow them to do any reconstructive surgery, so she's got these terrible scars, these terrible burn marks, and she's very hard to look at. And Eric even says, you know, she's really one of the ugliest people he's ever seen. That's not usually how someone would talk about their best friend. So again, this is a different kind of feel. Then he does a flashback and goes and talks about what happened when they were kids, when they were in 8th grade. Now, it's important to note that they're in high school and they're seniors, okay? So this is about 4 years ago, and they published a newspaper called Crispy Pork Rinds, and it got them in trouble. And it introduces, through this flashback, the antagonist of the story, one of the antagonists, we'll be honest, who is Mr. Moss, the principal at the middle school. And Mr. Moss, a very physically imposing man. He's 6'5", 230 pounds, just a big, hulking kind of man. He's got black hair, he's got a black beard, and he's got these kind of piercing blue eyes that he stares at kids with to make them very uncomfortable. And he comes after Eric, and kind of really enjoys making Eric sweat, literally. And it sets up kind of where we're headed in the story. Some things that you want to know. First, we see this established conflict between Motz and Eric and Sarah. And so we kind of want to see where it heads. Is this going to be something that is going to continue, or is this something that's going to end? We're not really sure, okay? But we need to kind of pay attention to that. Additionally, are they going to publish more newspapers? It sounds like Sarah Burns wants to, okay? And the thing that's kind of there, but we haven't really hit upon very much, it's just barely introduced, is Sarah Burns is not talking whatsoever. So there's two things there. Why did she get there, and sort of like what caused her to get into this sort of mental institution? And second, is she going to get out? And if so, what is going to help her get out? Okay? So that's kind of where we're looking and headed as we move through this story. I look forward to seeing more of it with you guys. Take care.